James Otis was on his feet. "It is all so much simpler than you think," he said. He lifted his hands and pushed against the rafters. "We give all we have, lives, property, safety, skills. We fight, we die, for a simple thing, only that a man can stand up." That night, when the boys were both in bed, Johnny heard Rab, usually a heavy sleeper, turning and turning. "Johnny," he said at last, "are you awake?" "Yes." "What was it he said?" "That a man could stand up." Rab sighed and stopped turning. In a few moments he was asleep. As often had happened before, it was the younger boy who lay wide-eyed in the darkness. That a man could stand up. He'd never forget Otis with his hands pushed up against the cramping rafters over his head. That a man can stand up. As simple as that. And the strange new sun rising in the west, a sun that was to illumine a world to come. Continuing my read through the Newbery Award winners, today we have Johnny Tremain by Esther Forbes that won the award in 1944. Esther Forbes was born in 1891 in Westborough, Massachusetts. She grew up surrounded by history. Her parents, a judge and a writer, were both historians, and she heard many stories about her family's history as well as their ancestor, Samuel Adams. She spent a lot of time riding around the Massachusetts countryside on her pony, and later lived on a farm where she helped with both the crops and the horses. After college, she worked at the publisher Houghton Mifflin for a while, and she also traveled a great deal and enjoyed gardening. She first became well known for her Pulitzer Prize-winning book on Paul Revere, one of the few women to win the History Pulitzer. All of the research that she did for that book ended up leading to the writing of the children's book, Johnny Tremain. Johnny Tremain is about a boy in Boston during the events leading up to the American Revolution. At the opening of the book, he is a highly talented apprentice to a silversmith, but after a tragic accident, he finds himself kind of lost and trying to find his way. That's when he meets some of the Sons of Liberty and starts getting involved in the events that would lead to the Boston Tea Party and the first shots of the war. I found it interesting that Johnny isn't a particularly likable character, especially at the beginning. He is a bully, and the narrator makes no bones of telling us that. He has a tendency to look down on basically anybody he sees as inferior to him. Even after his accident, his pride really causes problems, and he has a tendency to lash out when he's hurt or angry or even annoyed, or basically when his pride has been hurt in any way. He does grow over the course of the book, but it's very realistic, and so it happens very slowly. It's really when he meets his friend Rab and starts seeing somebody that he admires and starting to emulate him, and Rab has a way of asking him questions that make him start to think about how his actions and his words are impacting other people's reactions to him and his own life. So while this was realistic, it also made it a little difficult to connect with him at the beginning of the book. A number of the relationships in here really showed the importance of having mentors in children's lives that they can emulate, but also how different people can touch different people at different times. The historical context was also interesting, and seeing it through the eyes of this young boy. I mean, he's getting toward teenage years in the book, but seeing it through his eyes rather than a soldier or a general or a politician, he comes in contact with a lot of those people, but seeing it from his eyes is really kind of the everyday person, and how are they impacted by the tax levies and by some of the other turmoil with the British soldiers in Massachusetts, in Boston, and the rising group of rebels. It was enjoyable, and I can definitely see why it continues to be read and why many schools have used it, and probably some still do use it as a supplement to history about the American Revolution. You can also really see the patriotic messaging, and knowing that this was written in the midst of World War II, you can see that coming through in some of the passages, like the one that I read for the opening. There's just a strong emphasis on fighting to protect freedom and so that others can stand up. Overall, I enjoyed this, and I thought it was a valuable book. Next up, we have Rabbit Hill by Robert Lawson. Thanks and happy reading!